Let us help you reach your peak in retirement. It's time for Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee.
Hey everybody, welcome into Retirement Elevated. Thanks for tuning into the podcast with Sean Lee and myself as usual. Sean, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Another day, man. Just enjoying it. Starting to warm up.
Yeah, so you were just telling me before we started, you're checking out this golf tournament out in Arizona. I'd never heard of it. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. TPC Scottsdale. It's probably one of the most fun tournaments to watch, I think.
Yeah, the waste management thing, right? That was called? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, 16th hole is crazy. It's a huge stadium. People are going crazy.
Wow.
It's nuts.
I have to check that out. So yeah, folks, there you go. If you haven't checked that out, do so if you're a golf fan. And of course, I'm sure a good portion of our listeners probably are, but that's not why you're here to hear us talk about golf. Of course, we could do that one day, but we won't right now. What we'll do is we'll get into our topic, talking about does it matter this week on the podcast, or this podcast edition, I should say. Some people spend a lot of time, Sean, worrying about items on this list, really, and we'll just go through a couple of these and just get your perspective as to, do you think it will truly affect somebody's individual financial perspective, or is this just more of a kind of collective societal kind of worry? All right, so I got a couple of big headlines for you. We're just going to run through these and tackle them. As always, folks, if you got questions or concerns, make sure you always check with a qualified professional before you take action, like Sean at Elevated Retirement Group, 800-599-9895. All right, so the election. Let's start with that one. Obviously, later on this year, we're going to have a big, something going on. The market has been, over the last 10 days or so, it's been on a steady decline. I think at some point it was 29,400 or something like that on the Dow, and we're around 28.2 at the time of this taping. So, but is that more the presidential things going on, or is that maybe more some of these things going on, like with China and all the sicknesses and things going on?
The elections and everything on this list, and we can, if we want to run through all the things on the list and then hit them,
we can,
or individually. But everything here that you sent me is emotions. It's all emotion driven,
okay.
right? So we've got presidential election, we've got trade war with China, we've got Social Security fund, and then we've got the stock markets. The next 12 months, I think, are the items on the list, and a lot of these are, if you think about it, they're all short-term emotion, knee-jerk, reactive things. The president comes out and says, hey, we're going to tariff China again, and the market corrects 700 points, and then 3 days later it recovers.
Right.
Or most recently, the coronavirus. That coronavirus comes out, and we had our first fatality in the United States. That's a media sensationalization, I think.
Right.
What was it, like 15,000 people died from the flu last year, and
right.
That's
I'm with you.
I'm
with you. I'm just thinking. I'm just asking. Do you think that's kind of the cause of some of that sometimes, because we get a little panicky? I guess, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're emotional people. I mean, something scares us, we get knee jerky, and then the markets react. But long-term fundamentals don't add up to what the knee-jerk reactions are doing.
Right.
And so you look at whatever comes out of the impeachment process, or the left sling mud at the right, or the right slings mud at the left. Like, all of that's going to be short-term reactionary, but it shouldn't have a long-term effect on the overall stability of our markets if you look at the fundamentals.
Well, okay, so let's break it into this for just a second. So when it comes to the presidential type of thing, usually if you go back historically and look, the market doesn't have a huge reaction to the election normally.
Right.
And so usually it's the following year after policies get in place and all that kind of thing. But I think some could argue that obviously we're in very weird times right now when it comes to that. And so there's a lot of kind of speculation or curiosity that if the opposite side, for example, wins and goes into power coming in November, that we could see some big changes in the market just due to possible tax, repeal of the tax laws or things of that nature.
Well, we know for certain that the tax law will be what it is till 2025.
Okay.
So we know that. That was put into law. We know we have a really good idea, and we've talked about this in the past with what the Secure Act is going to bring. But realistically, until we get rid of the stalemate that's in Congress and and the House,
Right.
not a whole lot of things are going to change. You see the House pass things and the Senate kills it, or vice versa.
And that may be exactly what happens come this new election as well. So we may be sitting at another 4 years worth of doing a whole lot of nothing. So it's entirely possible. Okay, so does that matter? Yeah, I mean, and depending on how you want to look at it, does it matter about the election? Sure, go do your part. That's part of what happens as an American. Do your civic duty and all those things. Do what you feel is best in that regard. But at the same time, when it comes to the financial perspective, having that plan in place or trying to put some strategies in place to hopefully, because some people say, well, if whatever happens with this election, it could really alter my financial plans. Well, think about it. If you're just going into retirement, is this going to be the only election you experience in retirement? No. It's going to be like 30 years worth of them, hopefully, right? So,
right.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, so, we hope we hope this isn't the last election for some of us.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, having that plan in place to kind of weather that storm is certainly going to be a key factor. Okay, so like you said, we could go through these one by one. We should just kind of toss them out there. Let's talk about the health insurance marketplace. Just the fact that, like, I was chatting to somebody the other day, and they were like, Cobra is no longer the worst option. How weird is things when Cobra, what used to be incredibly expensive, is no longer the worst option?
I know, right? It's the health insurance marketplace is weird, and I'll tell you, there's so many things out there when it comes to subsidies and the reduction of costs and adjusted gross income versus what income actually counts. You get a lot of conflicting information. Now, we're seeing a lot of families that are either getting severance packages or retiring early or whatever it may be, going on Cobra because they understand the benefits that they're getting.
Right.
They're comfortable with them, and the cost isn't that much different than the open marketplace right now.
No, very true. Yeah. And it's interesting because there's so many, and we've been getting emails over, I don't know, the last several months, and a lot of times every so often we get one where someone's asking about retiring early, and usually that winds up being one of the big questions and sticking points is, if you're pulling the trigger on retirement before 65, what do you have in place for the healthcare aspect?
Right.
And if it's Cobra, and sometimes, initially they used to be, well, you'd say Cobra and you'd go, oh God, that's going to be really expensive. So what do we do about in that interim? Are we basically trying to make sure we can self-fund whatever insurance needs we need? Let's say if we retired at 60 versus 65.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of high deductible HSA options being used if that's available. You can dump a ton of money into the HSA, let it continue to defer out, and then if you've got that gap of time before you turn 65, you can use the HSA account to pay your premiums.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we're seeing that, deductible is a little bit higher. Short term, there could be some issues, but it's allowing people to get money into a tax-deferred, tax-free status to pay down their health costs when they retire.
Okay. Let's do at least one more here before we go on some of this kind of stuff here when it doesn't matter, because we kind of touched on the China thing. Obviously, we saw pieces of the trade agreement kind of going into effect, but then now this whole virus thing is, I think, kind of put all that on the back burner because everyone's focused. My wife actually works quite a lot. The company she works for, her territory actually is China. She goes there quite often. Obviously, they've banned her company shut down all travel to there for right now, so on and so forth. And so I'm sure that does have some bearing on the markets as well as it does on the impending or the next steps of the trade thing. So we'll hold off on that. I'm sure we'll revisit that another day. What about the Social Security aspect where there was an announcement the other day about, I guess it gained a year back or something like that of the funding from 2033 to 34 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Social Security, that's the most marketed topic that's out there. If you hear it on the radio, you hear it on dinner seminars and things like that. Come maximize your Social Security. Learn the pitfalls of Social Security.
Right.
You look at the financial marketing versus financial science, and all that's financial marketing.
Okay.
But if you look at the financial science and then historically what's happened with Social Security, it doesn't take huge tweaks in Social Security to prolong benefits. And if Congress does what they usually do, they kick the can down the road.
It'll be the last second. Yeah, they got to wait for the dumpster to be completely on fire.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then we're going to kick the can down the road 50 years and let the next wave of politicians deal with it. And so I don't look at Social Security. I'm not overly concerned that the government's not going to make adjustments. What I personally think is that they'll adjust up the income earnings limits, from the 137 and change or whatever it is to closer to 150, 160. And I see them changing the inflationary index that they use. But let's be honest, Social Security, when it was originally enacted, you could take it at 62, early retirement. That's never changed. So the age band needs to change, and we're starting to see that slowly move with the Secure Act.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking that's kind of like maybe a precursor, moving from 70 and a half on RMDs to 72 to maybe a little later on. And they probably should, right? Say, okay, no more 62 early withdrawal for Social Security, right? Make everybody 65 and above or something like that.
Yeah, at least for my generation, I'm 39.
All right, I'm 48. Okay.
We're looking at life expectancy of around 80 to 82. That means that if you take Social Security out at 62, you're getting 20 years of benefits. Yeah, I don't know that's not how Social Security was originally enacted. It wasn't there to be somebody's full retirement.
You only lived for like 2 years.
Right.
Usually. Actually, I think initially you died before you actually could take it. I think that was, yeah.
I think they did it at 65 and life expectancy was 62 or something.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a good point. And I'm with you. I think it's something simple as, and I know maybe some people out there listening say, well, it's not that simple. But for most of our audience, I think those folks are going to be fine. We're all sort of quote unquote grandfathered into that. I think for, like you said, people like myself and you under the age of 50, there's probably going to be a change there. And it's just as simple as, in my opinion anyway, at least my thoughts, is as simple as saying, okay, anybody who's 50 and under, you can't retire until at least 65. You remove that 3-year early window, and I've read some statistics and some numbers that could fund it for another 100 years. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of things to do out there, but I think a lot of times, like you said, I think it's a marketable conversation piece, and certainly a political conversation piece. So
right.
It'll constantly stay there. So, but again, if you're worried about it, if you've got questions on how Social Security plays a role, maybe the bigger question for a lot of our listening audience, Sean, is just, how is it playing a role in your financial plans for retirement? Because sometimes people look at Social Security as like it's over there. It's like, okay, I have a collection of all this stuff for retirement. Oh yeah, and Social Security. And it really should be incorporated in and be like a whole plan together, right? All of those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, look at Social Security as another fixed income source. I mean, that's what it is. I get it's a social benefit, but many retirees will have put into Social Security for 30, 40, 50 years. So why not leverage the government's money inside of your plan the most efficient way possible to keep more of your own money? Because if you're pushing out Social Security and you're retired, you need to get income from somewhere. I would rather have you leverage the government than use your pot, and for the simple fact that once your money's gone, it's gone.
Right.
It's not like you can call Social Security and be like, my hot water heater went out. I need some. Yeah. Will you send me an advance?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. So that's going to do it this week on Retirement Elevated. Hopefully you enjoy the podcast. We know we don't always come in with X's and O's or numbers. Sometimes we're just having a conversation about things that are going on in the world and then bringing it back so how it can relate to what Sean and the team does at Elevated Retirement Group. So again, subscribe to the podcast on any of the platforms out there that you might choose to get your information from: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeart, so on and so forth. And as always, you can check them out on the website at elevatemyretirement.com. That's elevatemyretirement.com. You can find the podcast there as well. And make sure you subscribe. We'd certainly appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Sean, thanks for your time, buddy. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.
We'll catch you next time here on Retirement Elevated. 800-599-9895. If you have immediate questions and you need to reach out to Sean and the team, that's the number to call.
Investment advisory services offered through Elevated Capital Advisors, LLC, and SEC.